So in Hebrews 8, now if he were on earth, meaning Jesus, he would not be a priest, since there are already priests who offer gifts according to the law. He means the Jewish priests, the Levitical priesthood. The place where they serve is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. And then he talks about how Moses was given a pattern to build the tabernacle after. The place where they serve is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. Much of what happens in the Old Testament is a copy and shadow of what is brought to fulfillment in the New. And even much of what's in the New and what we experience day in and day out in our current lives is a copy or shadow, a pattern, an indication of a future fulfillment. That's why, although I may be stretching it and I couldn't find any commentary to support this, the final verse here in Isaiah, God has been talking about how he will free the Israelites from their captivity. I will make your oppressors eat their own flesh. They will be drunk on their own blood as with wine. Then all mankind will know that I, the Lord, am your Savior, your Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. Now, that's an image of, in other words, your enemies will be in such turmoil and they will be so desperate that they will have to resort to cannibalism, which is a great sacrilege. The Jews recognize that in particular. Things will be so bad for your enemies, they will be so hungry that they will have to eat their own flesh and drink their own blood. But we might recognize this from our point of view, even though the author, Deutero Isaiah, had no intention of putting this idea into that passage. Perhaps God did when he inspired him. And either way, we don't eat our own flesh or drink our own blood. At Mass, we consume the flesh and drink the blood of Christ, not our own. We're freed from feeding upon ourselves. And incurvatus se, sin is a curving in upon yourself, a turning inward, a being left in a kind of a closed, self-contained universe that has no grace or input from without. So that our enemies, or those who are opposed to God, must resort to feeding upon themselves, whereas the true spiritual food, the true flesh and blood that sustains us, is the flesh and blood of God himself. I see that in that passage. I don't think it, certainly that wasn't intended by Deutero Isaiah, who wrote hundreds of years before Christ. And I don't see any commentators who point that out on Bible Hub. But perhaps that's another example of the shadow and pattern of things that are to come.